Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and National Parks show with Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith. We're the mother-daughter travel team and publishers of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, as well as Parks and Travel magazine. You can check them all out on BigBlendMagazines.com. We're also full-time travelers on our Love Your Parks tour, going to visit all of America's parks and public lands. And we're hoping to get to Fort Union National Monument real soon in New Mexico. And hopefully this will be spring this coming year, 2020, because that's our next topic today. On today's show, we have artist Melissa-Weinman joining us. She is the artist in residence in Fort Union right now, and then that is through the National Parks Arts Foundation. We do our shows with them every first Friday. They create these amazing opportunities for artists of all genres and mediums to spend an entire month in a national park unit. Places like Fort Union in northern New Mexico, Chaco in northern New Mexico, Dry Tortugas in Florida, Hawaii volcanoes. So all these amazing parks that we have, you could go spend a month to create. So I encourage you to go to their website, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. We also have Lorenzo Vigil joining us. Lorenzo is the park superintendent, so we all have to behave ourselves. So everyone, go have a look at the website for the park so you can see where we're talking about. It is nps.gov/FOUN. Welcome back, Lorenzo. How are you?
Oh, I am doing fantastic. We've had some great weather out here and exciting times, and I'm really looking forward to having a good conversation with you folks today.
Well, it's great to have you back on. I think you've been on a few times now, and now last time you chatted with us last year in the late fall, because we always do this in the late fall. You were the chief of interpretation, and now you're the superintendent. So publicly, we have to say congratulations. And do we have to behave more now when we come to the park?
I don't think so. I hope I'm still the same person.
Yeah.
The only difference is now just being responsible for more of the assets of the park or the entire park. But thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this new position here, and it's looking good. I mean, our future is looking really bright.
Yeah, and you've been, I mean, this is part of your family history, the park and the region. So, and you've been at the park for forever, like, for quite a few years.
Well, it feels that way. I've been here for 7 years. So now I'm going to add a few more years onto the end of that ticker, but that's quite all right. I do still have that, I do have that family connection to this place, from back in the 1860s. And that's one of the whole reasons why I wanted to be here. And now I get to just enhance that and also learn more about it. Plus, have folks when they come by learn more about the park too and their connection to it.
See, this is the lucky 7. That's it. 7 years. You never know what can happen, right? I want to bring Melissa on. Melissa, welcome to the show. And I encourage you all to go look at her website and see her amazing art. Melissa-Weinman.com. That's WEINMAN. Melissa, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be talking to you today.
Hey, and I'm
halfway through my residency.
You're halfway through. I know we're recording this today because it airs on the first Friday, and I know you're gearing up. You've got a couple of events coming up, but you get to stay in the park, right? And that's kind of a unique experience for people.
It's a totally unique experience because unlike a lot of parks, there's no camping at this one. The park opens at 8 in the morning and it closes at 4 in the afternoon during winter hours. So I was out there this morning in 28 degrees at 7 a.m. painting the Santa Fe Trail. Wow. So being able to live here means that I get to experience these unusual things. And then, some of the best light is also when the sun's going down. And so the sun goes down, about 6:15 right about now. And so after the park closes, I'm the only one out there.
That's amazing. Wow. That's amazing. Cool. I know that feeling. We stayed at this Nacogdoches, Texas, and it's the oldest city or settlement in Texas. And it's on the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail. And Anyway, they put us in this bed and breakfast, and it's like a mansion, this giant Victorian mansion. And you know what? They left us there by ourselves, Nancy and I alone. And we're like, what are you doing, man? Are you nuts? You know, here we are.
Yeah.
And you felt like a kid. And even the beds were like the Princess and the Pea bed, where you have to get up on little steps because the beds are so tall and big. I mean, this mansion was incredible. So I kind of get that feeling. Do you want to go run around the park and go, it's mine, it's mine?
It kind of feels that way, but in some odd way, you know, the ruins out there are, they're huge. They're many. They're like these sentinels out there, and they're kind of saying, "Wait a second, you're mine. You're mine."
Yeah. Well, it is. You know, the parks are for people, and that's interesting. You said 8 a.m. and it opens. Lorenzo, that's something Nancy and I discovered on our travels, that parks have open and closed hours. We found ourselves sleeping outside Petrified Forest National Park because it only opened at a specific time. So we should always check your website, right?
I would advise that, you know, because now in the fall, we do close at 4 instead of 5. And so, you know, we do get folks that show up and they're like, oh my goodness, you're closing. And they have 5 minutes. But we always do take some time to work with them because, you know, somebody took the time to come out here and see us. And, you know, many times I remember as I was a park ranger, I would sit out, you know, in front of the visitor center and talk to folks for, you know, maybe 20 minutes or go grab them a brochure, and that way at least they got something from the park and some attention.
Yeah. Can you give everybody an idea of where you are? You're obviously on the Santa Fe National Historic Trail, right? And so you're very close to Santa Fe, and also Las Vegas, New Mexico, right?
Yeah, we're an hour and a half north of Santa Fe, off of Interstate 25, or essentially 27 miles from Las Vegas, New Mexico, off Interstate 25, exit 366. And then you just come 8 miles west on New Mexico 161 and you show up at the park. And, you know, and the deal is what's kind of strange about Fort Union is we are today not a very well-known park in terms of locally, but back in its heyday, Fort Union was essentially extremely well-known because this was essentially the military outpost, the military district for the entire Southwest. So, you know, people knew where we were and where we were at. I always try to compare us with the national laboratories here in New Mexico, Los Alamos. And you know, as big as Los Alamos is in New Mexico is as big as what Fort Union was historically. You know, it was big dollars and big contracts and, you know, involved in just about everything that ever happened in the Southwest.
That's amazing when you think about you were like the center, the hub of everything. And so also you think about the times where, you know, people were following the trail, the Santa Fe Trail. Nancy and I we followed the Santa Fe Trail. Obviously we were in Santa Fe for a little bit, and then we went from like Pueblo, Colorado, across through Kansas out to Dodge City and that area. And it's pretty, like when you start following the trail and you realize what they went through. I mean, they were on like in wagons, and here we are now looking at life going, should we have electric cars? We can take Lyfts and Ubers. So it's a little different now, right?
Well, you know, and the thing about the Santa Fe Trail is, and I think we always forget about it. It was not a trail of settlement. It was a trail for commerce. And so that was one of the whole reasons why Fort Union was built in kind of this remote location. Number one, you know, protect the Santa Fe Trail. 2, be a federal presence in the West. 3rd was to take the soldiers out of towns and put them in an area where they couldn't get into trouble. You know, that's just what it was about. And, you know, one of the things that I'll tell you is you're talking about the vehicles, the conveyances that we use today with electric cars and all these models and different brands. Well, last year I was in Kansas City, and they were talking about the vehicles of the day, the wagons that were utilized on the Santa Fe Trail. And I found something out that was shockingly surprising. And what I found out is on the Santa Fe Trail, there were over 5,000. This is not a misprint. There were over 5,000 different brands of wagons being made.
Wow.
And they were over, I'm going to say, and this is right off the top of my head right now in this conversation because I just thought about it. I'm almost positive the speaker in this program said there were over 5 million wagons in the United States.
Wow.
Every family and home had 2 or 3 wagons. And with freight wagons, there were, again, thousands of brands. You know, it was like, you know, here's a Ford, here's a Chevy, here's a Studebaker, here's whatever. And all of them were all different. They all used different wheels and wagons and rims and hubs and axles. And there were so many name brands out there. And I just didn't know that. And you know, so if you really imagine how many wagons disappeared, you know, to today, like at one point there were over 10 million wagons in the United States.
Wow.
Where are they?
That's incredible.
You know,
that's incredible when you think about it, because we were so, and then in remote areas too, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody, that was the only way you got around, you know, either on horseback or on a wagon. So everybody had a wagon. And,
Wow.
and you know, so for what was on the Santa Fe Trail, you know, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of wagons that were used on it every year. And every single one was a different wagon. And that's why when a wagon broke down, you had to go see a specialist to fix your wagon, because there were almost no 2 wagons alike on the trail. And
Wow.
so they all took a different type of service. And that's why here for Fort Union, they did have a wheelwright shop in the mechanics corral. And it was to work on all of these wagons that were contracted by the military to be repaired. If you didn't have a contract with the military, you had to take your wagon into Las Vegas, and there they had civilians that worked on wagons that were non-military. But all the military stuff was worked on here. And just imagine, you know, as you're talking electric cars and, you know, hybrids, well, the same thing existed, you know, 150 years ago.
Wow. And when you think, you know, we've covered part of the Butterfield Overland Stage Route, and when John Butterfield took it over, how, like, you'd have 9 people, I think it was 6 or 9 people squished in this little wagon, and he worked with another company to change the design of the wagon. You were sitting on like a wooden bench and going, at that point, you were sitting at a wooden bench and they were hauling, and they were like, if you spit, it's going to go in your neighbor's face. You know what I mean? And it was like, you were just moving so fast. You got off the wagon for like 5 seconds, back on, off you go, because they were delivering mail and things like that. So that was always interesting. Now I'm like putting it in context of all these other ones you're talking about. That's pretty epic, you know? But Lorenzo, didn't they have like a highway system, like a right and a left, like a two-lane highway almost with the Santa Fe Trail?
It all depended on how much traffic was being put on the trail. In fact, most of the trail in some areas was, you know, up to half a mile wide to a mile wide. And the main reason for that is the condition of the trail. If it's muddy, you're not going to go to the muddy ruts. You're going to move over. There were no fences, so that's something that people don't think about. And then the other thing is, if you're out on the plains, imagine this. You're on a wagon train that, let's say, just has 50 wagons. Do you want to be the last wagon? Of course not. You're eating dirt all day long.
Oh.
So you would spread out. And be, you know, and maybe in a line for a little bit. Wagon trains were not very big. Number one, for protection. But number two, if you're on the plains and there's nothing in your way, you're going to ride almost in a line, so that if you had, you know, let's say an attack, you could circle the wagons for safety. It didn't happen as much as we were led to believe, but it happened. So wagon trains were pretty compact, or they were designed to where 10 wagons go into this area, 10 wagons go here. You know, these were strategies they talked about for protection, but you did not want to be that last wagon. And that's why it kind of wasn't really like a 2-lane highway. In some areas, if the terrain loaned itself to be that, then you had to do that. But if you could spread out, you're going to spread out because, again, you don't want to be that last wagon.
We don't want to eat dirt. Melissa, if you were alive way back when and had to get to Fort Union by wagon, would you paint your wagon? I'm sorry. Come on, it's canvas.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I could see you like out there with on a ladder painting the outside of the wagon. She'd have the most colorful wagon.
Like big flowers all over it, flower power wagon.
I know, like that
Exactly.
the very first hippie bus, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
Why
awesome.
not? I mean, if there are that many wagons out there, you'd probably want to do something to identify yours as separate from everybody else's.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you go like you're talking about being out there in 29 degrees. Like, doesn't like the paintbrushes like freeze up or anything? Or are you using acrylic when you're out there, or
No, it's oil.
it's
It's
oil?
oil
You're
paint.
really
I
good.
think
That's why the light too. That's got to help with the lighting in your lighting is awesome. I just love it because you just
Thank
have that.
you.
There's that.
It's soft. It's
Yeah,
soft.
there. It's what Mother Nature does, and it's. I don't know if that's. I've never really seen acrylics do it that way, but I always think oil helps with that. I don't know. I'm not an artist.
Well, it does help you to create some luminosity by being able to use translucent layers. But yeah, and there's something about oil paint where because it doesn't dry immediately that you can work it. And it's interesting that we're talking about all these wagons because I just spent the last week painting in the mechanics corral.
Oh, wow.
And there happened to be a couple of wagons sitting out there and a few wheels leaning up against the adobe ruins. And it's very picturesque. And of course, you can't stand there and look at those wagons and paint them in this corral without imagining some sort of narrative, you know, what it must have been like. And to actually examine some of the remnants of those amazing machines that hauled materials and people across the plains.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's like taking your apartment. Well, I can kind of, we don't have a wagon, but we
have a car.
We have a car, and that's what we do is I mean, it's our little wagon, and we talk to her as we drive on the road.
Do you have a name?
Yeah, she does. But it's Mulva Cleopatra Doppelganger. So anyway, so there's a long story behind that, and I'm not going to get into it on this particular
Say that
show.
10 times fast.
Yeah, but yeah, and I said it real fast on purpose. But there it is. But so you're painting there. Like, do you read like all the displays and the exhibits and any of the literature and kind of like imagine the people there? Because I know you're, plein air, and a lot of times that's nature, right? And rivers and,
right.
But now this has got the people history too.
It does. And when I found out that I was awarded this residency, I went to work immediately to start researching the history of the fort and the Indian Wars in New Mexico, and, started ordering books on Amazon and going to the library. And then
wow.
I was looking on the website for Fort Union National Monument, and I saw that they were having Fort Union Days in June. This was last June, right? And I could tell from what they were planning that there were going to be some live reenactments and some different, there were some Diné Ta Navajo dancers, and there were some Mexican folk dancers. And so I thought, I have to go. I have to attend Fort Union Days so that I can really get a better understanding of what this place was all about. So I've been preparing for this since, I think it was February, March, when I found out that I was awarded this residency. So since then, I've been trying to learn as much as I can about the history of New Mexico and Fort Union's role in New Mexico. So yes, there's lots of literature here as well. They have a fabulous visitor center where you can buy books on all sorts of things related to the fort. But what I really love is hanging out in the visitor center when I get a free moment and talking to the rangers, because they are a wealth of information. So inevitably, as I'm out and around the fort reading the different boards that tell you what's what out there, I have questions. And so I just mosey on over to the visitor center and talk to the rangers, and it's always fascinating, and their enthusiasm for this place is infectious.
That's you're really right. I mean, we call they're the rock stars of the parks. It's like, and every time we go to a park and a ranger takes us out somewhere, I start to go, okay, how long is it going to be before like they get stopped by every single person to have a question?
Right.
But it opens our minds because people ask questions we didn't think of, And so I think you're really right about that. It's interesting because you talk about, now you went into like, now I'm going to learn the history of New Mexico, and man, that's like so many layers of history. I mean, New Mexico is so fascinating, especially, the northern part. I mean, well, the whole state. But I think what's interesting about a fort is that really connects to history that really affects it on a national level, right, Lorenzo? With the significance of this fort, it really ties into people history that's across the country.
Yeah, I mean, Fort Union was involved in so much significant items that ever occurred in the West. Starting off with, of course, the establishment of the fort, the Civil War, decisions that were made in terms of national policy with Native Americans, reservation systems, major battles, and of course, kind of the dark side of forts, which never really gets discussed, but we try to share that information here. Who's on the other side of the guns and the bullets and the bombs? Somebody was.
Yep.
There were 46 forts built throughout the Southwest. Fort Union supplied almost all of them. And what's really sad is, somebody took the brunt of the place. And so we always talk about, kind of the positive aspects of what the fort was and, in terms of American history. But then we also talk about, on the American history side too, the negative components of a fort and what a fort is about. It's military, and a military sounds really good when you're on that side of it, but if you're on the other side, it's just not the greatest thing. But we want to share that to show, the duality of a place like this, what it's about and what it did and who it affected. And we're always really excited to share the fact that those people on the other side of the guns and the bullets are the Native Americans. They're still alive today. They still exist today, and they persevered. And that is something that's really important to us in our core values here, is not to be kind of one-sided. We want to be objective and talk a little bit about a lot of things that occurred through Fort Union, and some of them are pretty significant. The first 10 years of all the way from 1851 to 1861, there were slaves at Fort Union. It's something that most people don't talk about, but the majority of the forts throughout the entire country had slaves. And the reason for that is the officers and their wives had slaves. It's something no one really discusses. We know they were here at Fort Union. And then the Civil War starts. This is part of the Union, so of course slavery goes away at the end of the Civil War. So we know that didn't happen any longer. But we also got the half of that is we also had Buffalo soldiers that were stationed here and traveled through Fort Union. So we got that component. And so, there's just so much about a place like this when you're talking about national significance. A lot of that came through Fort Union. They enforced policy from Congress and from the American government that had national significance. Or if a battle took place, let's say in Arizona or Texas, they were supplied out of Fort Union, the military. So the influence of a place like this was just tremendous.
Don't you think it's interesting to have a program where an artist can come in and see the park through totally different lenses than how you might see it? It's kind of, I think it's interesting, have different people go in, look at the park, and come up with something, their version of the park, whether it's painting or music or poetry or a book, photographs. It's kind of interesting to put the history together with somebody of today to have like a new sheet on it without having to, having been a ranger for years and knowing the history so well, just come in and all of a sudden, here you are, you're going to paint a picture or do something that interprets the park in a brand new way.
And I think that's the advantage of doing these artist in residence programs is they bring in a clean slate. And you come in and you have your own preconceived notion of what the park is about or what the fort is about. And I think that's the greatness of national parks is we don't try to influence your way of thinking or what you want to do. We try to be as objective as possible. But one of the things that is really difficult about that is when you want to present these stories to folks, you want some of those voices to be from the people themselves. And so you gain a little bit of ownership of the place. And I always think that if you have a visit to a park, you always leave a little bit of yourself there, and you gain some of that knowledge. And I think that's what Fort Union is all about, is connecting to the human spirit, emotionally and intellectually, where you kind of it's like one time somebody was telling me, why do you sell coffee mugs? And I said, well, because when somebody's sitting down in, let's say, in Texas or Minneapolis or wherever they're from, and they're drinking a cup of coffee, and somebody looks at that Fort Union mug in their hand and said, hey, where did you get that? They're going to think about that relationship that they forged with the park at the time they were here. And that coffee mug's going to be that little spark that they're going to talk about the fort and what occurred and the history of it. And so they continue to share us with somebody else. And so we know we did our job. We forged that emotional and intellectual connection to them that they take with them forever.
That's, I think, what's so amazing about this artist in residency program with the National Parks Arts Foundation and everyone that's supporting this, because I know they get partners that donate to the program as well, and because art is timeless, and it's been the storyteller for so many years throughout history. History is often told in a more honest way, like what our national park system does, and other park systems. But art and music have often told given the feeling, the emotion behind that. Don't you think, Melissa, that you get the emotion of the people through art?
Especially if the artist has an understanding of the narrative of the history that transpired in that place. I do have to admit that even though I love history, when I'm wandering around these adobe ruins, oftentimes my attention is entirely focused on the beauty of the place. And maybe that's the different lens that you and Lorenzo are talking about, is that I'm, aside from everything that transpired here, is that my eye is constantly just looking for those beautiful moments where something's happening out there, the way things are lining up, or the way the light is reflected inside of a shadow, or the way that the Sangre de Cristo Mountains is performing this beautiful, spectacular blue-violet over there on the horizon, or whatever that is. But I do have a strong sense, especially in the history of painting, that when artists paint ruins, that there are all sorts of different lenses that are put onto that. But one of them, of course, is nostalgia, is the longing for another age, particularly when European artists went to Rome and painted the Forum as ruins, right? Things like that, or in Egypt or these other places, or even a place like Stonehenge. It excites the imagination. What happened here?
Yeah.
Why does it look the way it looks now? What did people really do here? And my project is called To Mark a Place, as if maybe I'm going to mark a place by making paintings of these ruins, but truly these ruins mark a place and the role that people had in this particular place.
You know what I think of? This is kind of like a weird, trippy thing, but when you go to historic sites, there's always nature connected in some way. And I always think, I always think like, if the trees could talk, right? If the walls could talk. I always think like when you get to ruins, there's always a lizard somewhere, okay? Or maybe a snake, but the lizards, and you think about, and people with storytellers, stories going down through time. I always wonder, like, has this lizard family been there since, before the wars, like in a fort, right? Does the lizard tell the story to the baby lizard, then the baby lizard gets old and has babies and pass it down? Like, do they know, like, where you're hanging out and having, your babies, or, you know what I mean? Maybe you lost your tail here, whatever it is. Does it get passed down through the birds? And does nature pass down the human stories? I just always wonder, because they might. I mean, why not? They teach how to hunt and, and all that kind of thing. So why not? So I don't know.
Well, they do see us, you know. Animals see us all the time. Like I noticed that, like where we're staying right now, in this historic hotel in Yuma, just outside my window, there's grackles, and I see over the days that I've been here that they're coming closer and closer. Like they want to know what's inside my room.
They know you have wine in there. No.
Yeah, I know. No, but they just seem to get familiar. Yeah, because we've been here long enough that they recognize us, and now they're not afraid, and they come closer. This morning I looked out down the row of chairs, and there's chairs outside every room, and there's a grackle sitting on one chair, which just happened to be outside of Lisa's room.
Yeah, they hang out with me. They
do. They hang out where the people are for some reason.
Yeah. Does that happen as a plein air painter? Does that happen, especially if you go back to the same spot over time?
Does what happen?
Animals
that nature is responding with recognition?
Yeah, do they know, oh, she's out there again painting. You know, maybe the birds like at first would fly away when you first set up, and then they go, oh, she's okay.
That's really interesting because, I don't know, I really feel that human beings and animals as well all leave an energetic imprint wherever they reside or wherever they do things, you know. So, but when I'm out there in the mechanics corral painting, inevitably they're like 3 cottontails, and they don't seem to be afraid of me at all. They're just hanging out in the vicinity of me. And and then there are lizards on my little portal in my residence here that sort of hang out. Oh, the cottontails are down there too. But the really interesting ones are the pronghorns that roam around the monument. They never come too close. I think they're pretty skittish, but I think they have kind of recognized who I am now. And they don't get too excited when I drive by, whereas initially when I'm out there walking or I drive by in my truck, they just take off at they're just amazing to watch them run. They just take off their run. They don't want to be anywhere near human beings, but perhaps this is the end of my second week that they're recognizing me and that I'm not a danger to them in any way. I'm not a hunter. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. They're protected in the national park. You know, it's a national park unit. What about people going to the park? Do they come and start watching you paint and talk to you while you paint?
They do, and it's really it's fascinating to see who's going to come up and talk to me. I had a husband and wife team approach me, and they were archaeologists, but the wife is also an artist. And to hear how they were responding to the park, and it was really interesting. One of the first questions out of her mouth was, have you sensed the presence of any ghosts here yet?
Oh, cool. Have you? I want to know. I want to know the answer. Have you?
I haven't yet.
Uh-oh.
But
I want to know if you do.
Fact that,
Halloween is coming.
Okay. Right. The portal is opening.
Yes.
Hey, I know. And this is going to air on the Day of the Dead. There you go. So,
it is.
November 1st and November 2nd. Yeah, that's good. Wow. When you think about all these stories about these, the energy but I think that's the other thing too, when you were talking about, the coffee cup, Lorenzo was talking about that and how that affects people. And it's a different lens, right? Like Nancy was saying, when someone sees you paint, you may be giving them a different way to look at the park while they're in the park, as they watch.
Through the artist's eyes. Who's primarily concerned with aesthetics, but secondarily concerned with telling a story.
Now, I know you have
capturing an event.
Exactly. Yeah. What happened here, this moment, and the sunrise and sunsets that's magic. I've seen some of your work with that. Oh my gosh, that's going to be epic out there.
It is pretty spectacular. One of the things that really impresses me about this place is the space, the wide open expanse. It's very unique, and it's really, honestly, great for refining landscape painting skills. And the way the light travels across this wide open space is just spectacular. I'm from the prairies of Minnesota, and so it feels very familiar to me, but I've been living in Tacoma, Washington for quite some time now. Excuse me. And, if I'm out there plein air painting in Washington, there are so many trees getting in the way of the horizon. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, right? But as I'm looking out here, if I look off to the west, it's the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. If I look off to the east, it's the Turkey Mountains. If it's off to the north, it's the Cerro Pelon, which is a volcano, and the south are just plains. And it's really quite spectacular to be able to see, 20 miles, 25 miles.
Wow.
And as an artist, to see if you can depict that kind of depth of space.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like working that artistic muscle here to see just how far I can take it.
That's neat. I mean, and the prairies are neat. That's when we were in northern New Mexico and even up into southern Colorado and even all the way across Kansas, like the prairies. I thought it was like super cool. And it's like a whole different set of birds. The wildlife changes, and the colors are really neat because the brush is neat. The vegetation, I think, is really neat. So are you finding that too? The vegetation, does that inspire you?
Absolutely. The colors that are present just in painting, that expanse across the prairie are extraordinary. I checked out a book from the library here at the fort on the flora of the region, so I could familiarize myself with some of the plants. But I'm telling you, they range from a deep gold green to the sage, which is really very cool blue green, and then you mix that with all the beautiful sienna tones of all the dirt that's underneath your feet and breaking in between the sage. And I mean, I could just look down and find a beautiful palette of something to paint. I wouldn't even have to look out. But I think when you take into consideration those adobe ruins, which range from a pale pink to a deep red orange, depending on how the light's hitting them, and the way they contrast, the complementary color is the sky. And then if you look down and you see the beautiful blue greens and the yellow greens that are everywhere, the complement to that color is found often in the ring of mountains that are surrounding here on the north, east, and west. So it really is a delight. It feels very colorful, even though somebody might walk out onto this plain and go, nothing's out here.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. Your description of all the colors, if you were talking about food, I'd be starving by now.
It is. It's absolutely delicious.
I know, it's a nature fix.
I photographed my palette and posted it on Facebook for my students because I just wanted them to see how when your colors look beautiful on your palette, it's not a guarantee that the painting's going to work, but if it doesn't look good on your palette, it's not going to look good in a painting.
It's not going to work. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. So you teach as well, right? Up in Washington?
I do.
Sweet.
I do. I have about 17 years of teaching at 3 different universities and 14 years at University of Puget Sound, which was my last gig. I quit in 2004. But I've taught at Gage Academy of Art in Seattle, and right now I'm teaching privately out of my studio.
Nice. And then have you done an artist residency like this before in a park setting?
Nope.
Oh, wow. So
no,
this is
my
your
first time.
Wow, I would have thought you'd be there, like, I don't know, man, you are nature, like you're the nature painter, It's really amazing. I love your art because you've got the textures and that's
there's definitely a softness. It's realistic, but it isn't that. Sometimes when you paint realistically, the edges get a little too hard and it looks more like you've just painted a photograph, as opposed. Yeah, so yours it's soft, it's got movement. Especially like the painting on your website of the chickens, mostly because the one that's looking up. We were at Vicina's ranch, I think, they had a pen of chickens running around, and I could go out and I would sing to them like in their voice, and they started singing back, and then it was like every afternoon I'd go, and just before I'd even get to where the chickens were, they'd all start singing. I'm like, man, this is cool. I got a chicken choir. And they used to look up at me. It was really fun. But that look, the one chicken that you have that's kind of looking up at you as you're painting, I'm like, that's exactly the look. My chicken choir right there.
I had backyard chickens, so I did a number of paintings of chickens. They're just beautiful companions and lovely birds.
Oh, their feathers. They're so pretty too. You know, our conversations have really spanned on this one. I mean, we're talking about from wagons to chickens and lizards having babies. I don't know, but it happens on here sometimes. Now I know that you have a couple of events. I know this is going to air again on first Friday, so it's 1st of November this airs, but can you tell us a little bit about what you have planned for your events? Because this always happens at a National Parks Arts Foundation and a residency. The artist, if it's a musician, often will do a concert. Artists, you know, to me, you're doing an event every day because you're out there painting. So there's like this educational component for people. But what do you have planned?
Well, this Saturday at 11 o'clock, I'll be up at the Visitor Center, and there's a portal just outside the Visitor Center, and under there, I'm going to be giving a demonstration on landscape painting. I'm calling it Using Diminishing Intervals to Create Space, and I'll be demonstrating how I would compose a painting looking over at the ruins of the hospital, of the old Fort Hospital, and we'll see how far I get in actually making a painting, but that's my first event. And then on Friday the 25th at 7 o'clock in the Las Vegas Arts Council, I'll also be giving a demonstration of something similar and talking a little bit more about my project, especially because by that time, my project is coming to a close, and I'll be able to talk a little bit more conclusively about the project.
Lorenzo, I know Santa Fe is not far from you, and that's, you know, known for, you know, its art and history as well. But Las Vegas, from what I've been seeing, Las Vegas, which is, you know, really your gateway community, right? That has really grown in regards to maintaining architecture and protecting these historic buildings. And is that where people stay in those historic hotels that are there? I know, like there's Harvey House history there, Harvey Girls, and but it seems, along with the architecture, art is also prevalent in Las Vegas.
Yes, it's a fairly heavily, I guess, influenced by art and, you know, its own architecture. Excuse me. One of the things that I think is unique about Las Vegas is just the amount of Victorian homes that exist in the community. And then, you know, you're talking about some of these old hotels that are still there, La Plaza. One of the ones that is coming right back to life, talking about Harvey Girls, is the Castaneda Hotel. That is being renovated right now. I know they're open right now, and it is just remarkably beautiful. And then, you know, Las Vegas is one of our kind of a place where people spend the night and come and visit the park. There's a small motel in Mora, Raton, which is just north of us. And we've been really fortunate to be an influence for people wanting to come here and affecting the tourism in the region. And, you know, with Las Vegas, with all that history, boy, there is a, as you're kind of talking about it, there is a really good artist community in Las Vegas. One of our friends group slash, you know, partners, Concerned Citizens for Historic Preservation, CCHP in short, they do a lot to present and help preserve, you know, a lot of these historic buildings in town, and then of course showcase them several times during the year so people can, you know, have an interest and also want to become good preservationists, you know, to Las Vegas and retain that historic fabric that the town really has.
Awesome. We're gonna have to go stay there, in both places, Nancy. You know, I'm already planning our next visit to the region. So we're going to come see Lorenzo, and I'm going to go play with the pronghorn and see the ruins. And it's just a magic thing. And since there's Victorian homes, do you think they'll let us stay in a Victorian mansion by ourselves?
Who knows? You never know. And then, you know, of course, we also have the, you know, what they call it, the castle out there, which is now the United World College. And that was also a component of the Harvey homes, you know, in the period. And there were hot springs right below that there. And so there's just so much of that type of history that you're talking about in Las Vegas with tourism and art and architecture that is pretty darn relevant.
Amazing. I can't wait. Melissa, are you going to do this again? Would you do it, go and stay in a park for a month again?
Absolutely. I'm already
Awesome.
thinking about applying for Hawaii.
Oh, I think
your
you should.
family.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, Alice Lease was at Fort Union, and then she did, Hawaii volcanoes, and she's another amazing plein air painter as well. So, follow in her footsteps over there. I'm just saying,
Thank
it'd
you.
be awesome to see you over there. Everyone, again, you can keep up with Melissa on her website, melissa-weinman.com. Are you on Instagram? You said Facebook, so people can find you there too?
Instagram and Facebook. All
right. Awesome. Everyone, keep up with Melissa there. And of course, on the National Park website, it's nps.gov/FOUN. So thank you so much. Lorenzo, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. I'll throw in a plug-in. Please make sure also and like us on our Facebook page. It's just
that's right.
/Fort Union NM on Facebook, and you'll find us, and we'll be sharing everything you share with us on there, and just a great way for people to learn more about Fort Union in our area.
Awesome. And we also want to give a shout out to the National Parks Arts Foundation. Keep up with them at nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Also social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, very important for artists to follow them there, and also get their newsletter, because that's how you're going to find out about these incredible opportunities. And sometimes they, Fort Union is an annual event. And sometimes they get like, hey, we've got this one over here. Maybe it's Dry Tortugas. I don't know. I'm just pulling that off my head here. And you may only have a few weeks to register because of the way the whole funding works. So you need to get those notices and then just go for it and be like Melissa and go have fun in a park and get out there in nature and just enjoy. So nationalparksartsfoundation.org is the site. We want to thank everyone for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Our shows air Sunday through Friday. You can keep up with it all at bigblendradio.com. You can listen through to the segments on whatever your favorite podcast outlet is, if it's Spreaker or SoundCloud or Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, you name it, it's there. And we always love to play music for our guests. And Melissa, I thought today we'll play a song. It's called Clouds Alive in Wild Paint, because I think it was written for you. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is by May Edwards, is an author and musician and Emmy Award-winning video or movie editor. So everyone, you can go to mayedwards.com. It's off of her album, Grace. Thank you both so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, and thank you for hosting us.